So this session that we're going to do this afternoon, I'm kind of feeling to do it in the first maybe 45 minutes as a guided meditation. And I'll be speaking some of the information that we touched on earlier today. And just for us to really be able to relax and just receive what's coming in. It just feels like there's a deepening happening. I really want to honor the deepening and move right into the direct experience of the states that we're actually talking about. I think that's a very doable and beautiful way through guided meditation to enter into some of these states. So, you want to just lower the lights a little bit? Yeah, is it okay? Should I? Volume? Maybe if this was. Yeah, there's 3. And part of the, is that too loud? Part of the handout, the contemplative handout, which is really the summary of a lot of the topics that we're talking about. I am going to touch on this in this guided meditation. And the 12 links of dependent arising, we're probably going to do tomorrow. It's a little esoteric, and we want to be able to have some type of foundation of some of these stages and aspects of meditation we want to, or I'm feeling to get into before we go into the 12 links. I'm good. Is everybody else good with the sound? Too loud? Wait. Good, not good? You're going to lower it? I could just push it away too. How's that? Is that good? Okay. So if we can just all sit, get comfortable. We're going to do this as a guided meditation, but what I'm going to be speaking about is meditation. So there's a lot of questions that come in to the Kempos and to a lot of spiritual teachers that I've spoken with about meditation. Most people feel at some point that they're doing something wrong in meditation, that it's not working for them, that it's supposed to be doing this, kind of moving us in to a state of emptiness, and it's not doing that. Or it's supposed to be quieting our mind, and it's not doing that. So there's a lot of expectations when it comes to meditation. What it's here for. What do we really do meditation for? A lot of teachers start out teaching meditation through just having students and aspirants just sit and be aware. Just awareness. Because that will kind of bypass a lot of these troubling thoughts that actually come up, that I'm doing the wrong thing, this isn't how it's supposed to feel. Meditation, especially in the beginning for a lot of people, brings up kind of afflictive mentation, right? Mental activity that feels like we're being afflicted rather than calmed. But to a certain extent, when we're just busy and moving through our day and our to-do list, we're not really paying attention so much to what's happening in our mind and how calm we are. But when we sit down to meditate and we're not actively pursuing anything, and we're not actively engaging in our sense perceptions, it becomes, our mind seems to get louder. The thoughts that are just spinning around that we're paying attention to during the day because we're getting things done, those thoughts are still spinning, they're still loud, right? But we're just not engaging them in the same way. They're not driving our behavior. So all of a sudden, they become a nuisance. We sit down to meditate and say, okay, now I don't want to have any thoughts. And it's like blah, 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 blah. And that just goes on and on and on and on. So in Buddhism, one of the things that we talk about in meditation, in terms of what meditation is here to do and how to meditate, one of the first things that's brought in is the importance of new information coming in that's not going to be so relatable or connected with information we already have. We touched on this a little bit this morning as we talked about or brought up, and we have this whole map of how the world works. And in the spiritual journey, we feel like, wow, that map isn't working. It's inaccurate. I've been deceived. A lot of people feel when they start waking up, they wake up to the deception of the culture and the environment and everything we've absorbed. So then we feel like we need to throw away a lot of the information we believe. Our concepts, our belief systems need to just be discarded. But to think that we're just going to discard them is a very difficult thing to do. In Buddhism, and a lot of the paths as well, traditional paths, mystical Christianity, I was on that path, and Hindu, I was on that path. Both of those paths use the same methods, which is you start learning about how things really work, what the nature of mind is. This whole world is created through our mind's perceptions, conceptions. There's a linkage from how things are to where we get to in terms of living in the created samsara that we live in. And that's an important point, because when we do have the realization that we have created the world that we live in, we can take responsibility for that, and then we're no longer looking outside of ourselves for anyone to blame for like what's wrong. We know that anything that's wrong is inside, right? Or seemingly wrong is really coming from inside. There's nothing outside that's creating our experience. There's things that might alter our experience and impact it, but we literally create our own experience. When Buddha Shakyamuni first did his first turning of the wheel, which was to introduce the Four Noble Truths, a lot of what he spoke about, there were 3 turnings, 3 cycles of teaching, and the first cycle of teaching was the Four Noble Truths. What he was trying to impress upon people at that time, because at that time nobody was on the Buddhist path, because he brought it in, what he was saying was, if we look at our lives, if we look at what's happening, we'll see that we're suffering. We'll also see that there's something called impermanence. Everything that we experience outside of ourselves comes and eventually goes, including our own bodies. He also introduced an aspect of emptiness with the understanding, the explanation that if something comes and it goes, it can't be real, right? So part of what he was saying is everything we see, everything we experience, all the objects in our world are more of a display rather than truly real. And then also that's true for our bodies. So this first turning of the wheel, this first cycle of teaching, was to introduce people to the fact that life in the way it is right now, in the worlds that we have all created, is suffering, is a samsaric suffering, and we're creating that suffering, and there's a way to get out of it, and there's a path to walk to get out of it. Part of what he was explaining in that first turning was information that was new to people. People hadn't really thought about impermanence. So what he was saying was, this is what impermanence is. It's something that comes and it goes. Everything's impermanent. And he said, don't believe what I'm saying. Don't have just blind faith and take this on, but inquire yourselves, look yourselves, watch your mind. So in a way, he was laying the foundation for meditation. What he was doing was he was giving new information that contrasted with the way people thought about themselves and about life. And as they thought more about this new information was absorbed, just like the old information is. And people started having insights. And those insights got linked. There's like a linkage in the nature of our mind, and there's a linkage into the nature of emptiness. So if we contemplate the impermanence of the world that is surrounding us through our senses and our perceptions, we can begin to see gaps where we have clear glimpses. Not only do we understand what impermanence is, we're actually starting to experience it. That experience of impermanence is again a meditative state. The experience of emptiness is also called meditative state. When we're established in emptiness, our post-meditation, when we're not sitting on the cushion, we're still experiencing emptiness. We're still in a state of closer reality to absolute reality. There's, many levels of relative reality. We're in a very gross level of relative reality. In fact, we can say we're not really in reality, right? As we start experiencing emptiness more and more, our consciousness moves into the place where that is becoming our very experience. So contemplation turns into realization. So in the Buddhist path, and again in other traditions, what's happening for us to realize emptiness, realize the ground of being, and also understand and know how to meditate, new information comes in. We contemplate that new information. We start having insights about it, and it then kind of carries us into a new state of reality. In kind of the way the spiritual journey has unfolded since the incoming of Buddhism, which was in the 1960s, a lot of students of Buddhism, again, it's only been here for about 60 years or so, more or less, right? So a lot of people, it takes a long time to really understand the path. And a lot of people were very excited about the path and wanted to become teachers, and there were teachers needed. So they took pieces of the path, and that's what they started teaching, which was helpful, because people were really wanting to understand Buddhism, and there weren't enough people that knew about it, particularly Westerners. We hadn't grown up in Tibet, or Bhutan, or Nepal, or India. So our understanding of it was a little fragmented. So we started teaching meditation without giving a foundation of how we move into meditative states. So even now, we're in 2024, Buddhism has been around for a while. Many of us are very experienced meditators. But if we look to the people that we may be teaching or counseling, or just look to the greater humanity, meditation is very misunderstood, misconceptualized. The method by which people are meditating is not really allowing them to achieve true meditative states. A meditative state in Buddhism would be considered meditative absorption. Meditative absorption is meditation. So if we're reading something, we're acquiring information, we're contemplating, we're getting absorbed in it, we become one-pointed. We have one-pointed focus on what we're contemplating. We're so absorbed in it, we start experiencing it. Okay? This is truly what shamatha is. Shamatha is a one-pointed concentration in meditation. The path from shamatha is into vipassana. And vipassana is the realization of emptiness. So we go from meditative absorption, one-pointed meditation, into the gradual experience of emptiness. And that would be the vipassana state. And then emptiness itself, there's many levels of it. In fact, there's so many levels of it. It's spoken about in some of the sutras and some of the teachings that we don't fully realize it until we're actually at the threshold of Buddhahood. So when we talk about emptiness, it's not really just emptiness or no emptiness. There's levels upon levels upon levels. And there's a lot of signs as we're moving more into emptiness that are telling us that we're experiencing it. So we could monitor our own progress on the path. So let's just sit for a few minutes. Just want to receive everything that that's just come through, and I'm going to be adding to that a little bit also. If we really looked at our minds, we would see that our minds process our world in a certain pattern. It can be explained a lot of ways. Part of this patterning is that we're trying to create an understanding of what's happening around us, but without a foundation of accurate information. And this is called ignorance. So all humans are born into this earth plane realm in this state of ignorance. Inside us, we have Buddha nature. We have wisdom. For us to be a human being means that we've had lives before, here or elsewhere. And we come in with an accumulation of the karma that has been acquired from past lives. So not only are we in ignorance, not really remembering or knowing how reality works, but there's an overlay of karmic forces, the tendencies that we've had from lifetime to lifetime that create biases. And we're born with these biases. They're individual and unique for every person. The way that our minds work is that our mind is actually processing and analyzing, trying to keep us alive. It's also trying to keep us happy. And with all the karmic forces that have accumulated, there's a sense in each one of us of what will make us happy, what we want or what we don't want. This consciousness mixed with what we want or don't want, and the karmic accumulation we have, each as an individual, becomes our personality. Our personality is a heap of opinions. If we have an opinion, it's part of our personality. For us to understand emptiness, that all phenomena is empty, and we as this body here are also empty, it's necessary to have the realization of what our actual personality is and is not. There's remnants of our personality that go from lifetime to lifetime. But when this body dies, the gross aspects of the personality dissolve. Part of the spiritual journey is to recognize this and use methods to have the personality dissolve before the body dies. There's aspects of the journey that are brought in before we face the ultimate scary revelation that we don't exist in the way we thought we did. Teachers are very masterful in not bringing that aspect in the very beginning, because it's too terrifying. And this is another reason new information is brought in. An understanding of a bigger, universal consciousness. In Buddhism, it's called the billion world system. There's a billion worlds. Most of them have higher intelligence, rely on wisdom, do not have judgments or biases, do not have negative qualities that are a byproduct of developing opinions. They conduct themselves with a deep connection, an actual realization that they are part of what we're calling the ground of being, Dharmakaya. And Dharmakaya is the essential essence, energy. It is unborn, It does not die. It does not change. It is the potentiality of everything. All of us have what's called drops of Dharmakaya in our body. It's part of our consciousness. It's how we feel love and wisdom. And again, it's overlaid with biases, personality, opinions. If we were able to drop our personalities, what would be revealed to us is this Dharmakaya that's right inside of us. We would realize ourselves as part of the ground of being. Or it could be said that we're emanations of this ground of being. Mind, entering into Dharmakaya, the ground of being, has the power to create. And what's created is the world around us. Most of us are not in control of what we're creating because we really don't understand the nature of mind. Almost the entire path consists of understanding the nature of mind, so that we can create the world that we want. On the earth plane level, or in what we call the Sambhogakaya level, which is a more sublime existence, or a Dharmakaya level, which would be like the level of Buddha Shakyamuni, Jesus Christ. If we look at our outside world and consciously choose to not analyze it or conceptualize it, we cut the links through which the mind processes. If we cut this chain link of events that happens as a process of our mind, we cut through the belief system and the actual experience of being born, aging, and dying. And that is, to a large extent, the goal of the spiritual journey. Because of our karma and our ability and choice, or unconscious choice, to assess things in a negative or sorrow-filled way, we stay stuck in sorrow, in impermanence, in cyclical birth, aging, and death. There is a belief system that blankets our entire earth plane existence and planet, that birth, aging, and death are real. We have been greatly deceived. It's just a belief system, and it's inaccurate. Because we believe there is birth and death, brings in many levels of suffering. In more advanced teachings, it's talked about how unnecessary suffering is. It's just a byproduct of the confused mind. The receiving of this type of information creates a different way of looking at our thoughts and of perceiving the world around us. And it's through this way that confusion and misunderstandings actually fall away on their own. So we can look at the suffering of our lives, decide we've had enough of samsara, see that the quality of our life is not what we want, have a realization that we're truly not really happy, we could try to improve our personality. Replace negative thoughts with positive thoughts. Put effort into changing to become more positive people. But the coming into the realization that is a true reality, the connection to advanced spiritual beings that are already living this way, and listening to what they have to share with us, is a much faster way. If we cut the chain link of the habitual pattern that our mind is constantly cycling through, we will see the objects around us as emanations, as a display, as arising from a ground of being that is perceivable, noticeable, observable. Dharmakaya, the ground of being, is not invisible. We just can't see it. One of the powers of the mind is that what we think is happening eclipses what is really happening. What we think is what we manifest. If we stop thinking, assessing, having conviction in our map of the world, a true map of reality arises. This is called sublime intelligence. We start moving to more and more sublime mentation, mental experience, mental activity, that then becomes our visceral experience. Our world becomes much bigger. And we will be constantly receiving signs from those that have gone before us, reaching back to help us come out of confusion. One of the signs that we're glimpsing or moving into this ground of being is a state of bliss. Called samadhi. In the realization of emptiness, we are established in samadhi, bliss, joy of existence, liberation, or a level of liberation. The signs of this state of being are many. We're no longer prone to being reactionary. We're well versed in understanding how the phenomena around us works. No longer has any power to hook us into negative thinking, fear, a belief in lack, or sorrow. We're not motivated in the same ways we were before. We may no longer have an interest in accumulation of wealth or acquisition of goods because we know they're empty. And they have no meaning where we're going to. We begin to have glimpses of the conduct that pervades higher world systems. where the rules of conduct are generosity, service, a level of gratitude and appreciation, celebration. Intense joy is felt. We begin to have glimpses, moments of this. Another sign is that we begin, or we master, control over our senses. Control over our thoughts, and our speech, and our actions. We are fully conscious and present. We may find ourselves becoming interested in more esoteric teachings, information on higher world levels. And how our mind and body function together, which is through the channels and the winds that compose our subtle body. When we drop our physical, gross human body, we are left with the subtle body. And it's very beneficial to understand how the subtle body works. Because it is the subtle body that creates the gross body. And through our understanding and realization and control of our subtle body, we move into deeper, higher states of samadhi. Begin to have supernatural abilities. Transcend the earth realm. This is advanced states of awakening. It is all available for us. If that's what we seek. The only reason not to seek it is because we don't know about it. The spiritual path lays aside confusion so we can know everything we need to know. And use everything, bring everything onto the path to aid us into a quickening of awakened mind. On this retreat, we are encouraged to continue to receive whatever information is coming in through materials, sessions, each of our own expressions and shares, glimpses that are coming in, connections to bodhisattvas whose entire existence and attention is devoted to listening for sentient beings who are calling for help. This is a real thing. This center and all of our own environments are filled with these beings. So we're encouraged to use everything that is being offered. To use our time to contemplate, become absorbed. True meditation. How was this for everyone this day? And feels like a lot of things came in. Yeah? Okay. I think it's really beautiful to receive feedback, how it is for each one of us. Some of this may be new information for people, some of it may not. If there's anything we want to express on what we're understanding, because there's different interpretations. All this material can be interpreted in relative ways. There's not, for the level we're at, there's not an absolute, maybe for a little bit of it, but for a lot of it, it's very relative, so we can be interpreting it differently. And it would be helpful to hear how we're experiencing it. So if anyone feels to come up, or just we can pass the microphone, if there's any questions also, and we can sit a minute to see if there's anything arises in us that we want to share. Is it too dark in the back? Paul, is it too dark back there? Okay. All right. Yeah. Do you want to come up, Sharon, or just get the mic? Either's fine. Yeah.
So in my own experience, I did definitely have a very, beautiful and clear and wonderful teacher all along the unfolding as it's happening. And I'm an avid reader, so I read from different traditions and different views of the unfolding of our nature. But I've really appreciated what you're offering, and you should publish your writing.
Thank you.
It's very good. It's really very clear. Is the clarity. Because I see, in my own experience or working with other people, and I've come to appreciate confusion, because then, what you thought was happening and what the mind was perceiving, then almost like goes, and then, I think as Jennifer said, then something of wisdom can come through. Mm-hmm. And so I no longer, for a while, confusion was challenging, but now it's almost welcomed.
Right.
And then there's this space, and then something reveals itself coming straight from wisdom, rather than the old concepts. But what I've seen with people that I've worked with is if they don't have kind of I don't know how to say this, because for here it was quite intuitive. It just unfolds, and then something, awareness itself goes, it sees itself as it's unfolding, and the insights are a feedback loop of what's unfolding. But what I see often with people that I work with that have quite real and true spontaneous recognitions. I mean, they're not mind, they really are a shift of identity. But without a clear, I don't know what the word is really, clarity or a structure, then when the flurry of deep conditioning comes forth, the liberation, then it throws them off, or they don't have something to lean on, or to realize the reality of it, that all these great beings have themselves discovered and then report back. And so anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is I've really appreciated the clarity. And though I can't say my own unfolding at this point, and it's just always in the beginning, well, I was going to say it doesn't follow a structure, but in truth, it pretty much does. It doesn't seem like it, because this happens, and then this unfolds, and then this unfolds, and it knows itself. So it's like referring back to itself. It isn't like Sharon's going, well, I don't know whether that's true or not. It just reveals itself, right? But anyway, I really have appreciated the clarity that you've brought forth, and it's very, very helpful. Because often, especially I think with more of the direct path, you rely on what's arising here, but it can be extraordinarily confusing because it also creates such a strong liberation. And then that clouds and obscures and, disorients almost the voice of wisdom and truth. So I couldn't hear your meditation too much, but I could feel it. And it was really quite beautiful and vast and clear and true. So.
And we are recording everything. So if anybody wants, the meditation audio or video, we can be sending that out to everyone. I think, Sharon, what you're talking about was actually my personal experience, where I had spontaneous spiritual experiences, but I wasn't purified. Right? So then all this comes back in terms of, clouding over and creating confusion. And it's a great contrast because the spiritual experience comes in and it's just like the clouds have parted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then, the personhood arises back up and it's like, ooh. Yeah. And you're not quite knowing what's happening or how to maneuver. Yeah. And that was my experience for a very, very long time, decades actually, trying to figure it out. And I don't think I was actually had as much clarity as you have talked about, where it just became apparent, oh, this is this, and here's what I do now. Right. I would kind of regress, actually, take a few steps back. So that's one of the reasons when I thought about, not only doing this retreat, but thought about how the path works, start to assimilate all the pieces of the path, I thought, wow, I kind of wish I would have had that.
Mm-hmm.
And if for myself as a younger person that was kind of stumbling along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
which is partly how this retreat kind of unfolded too.
Well, that's,
And
yeah.
with Jennifer.
It's very helpful. And, from all of my experiences with the different teachers and traditions, and the Tibetan does teach that structure and clarity, probably more than almost any other tradition. But, until I had my own experience, I could feel it, but I couldn't bring it in.
Right.
And now, it's like, oh yeah, well that's this, and that's how that works, and then it creates that almost like a map of understanding.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, always wonderful to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, always wonderful.
Also, for anyone on Zoom that would like to speak or ask a question or something to share, please let us know. Karma Choing will be checking the monitor, and you can chat him.
I really appreciate what you said, because I understood it as both ways, like a wild way and a very, very path on the ground way, thinking Aquarius and Virgo in some ways. But I wanted to say to you for being here, my heart is very happy. And you just touched on it briefly about this place. And what is in this place for me, coming from never having been here before, my meditations are just dancing light. I mean, this place, I want to make a commercial. And anybody seeing this, you must come to Crestone, to this place, because it is astounding. And thank you for holding this space for us.
Of course, thank you for being here.
Really grateful for what you two are bringing forward. There's not been one word that hasn't just nailed it home. So that's amazing. And the framework that you have been presenting, as Sharon has said, it's great. It's a great container and a reference. And then I just want to really share this experience this morning. You didn't start talking, hardly, like maybe for a couple of minutes. And I had this huge crown opening and bliss. I didn't stop crying for about 45 minutes. It's like, and then it happened again. Thank you. Thank this place. It's so potent and so greatly appreciated.
Thank you. It's so beautiful to hear. Yeah.
Thank you. Your voice is magical, and there's so much more that comes through than just your words if you're listening. And in order for me to listen to every word and every breath you made in the space in between, I just want to remind myself in these moments, and I just want to remind each other
that if confusion arises or distractions while we're listening, I find it so amazing to come back to just the breath and see where I am. See if, when I'm processing this information, if I'm holding my breath. And if I'm holding my breath, it's okay. I'm just noticing I'm holding my breath. And maybe I want to exhale completely or inhale fully, and then I'll be with that, but still listening. And so the confusion most certainly comes, or the distraction where you're really not listening. But if you just come back to that thread of truth that we're inhaling and we're exhaling, that's something that works very well for me, just to come back to the present moment, because we can fly away and go someplace else, and we're not practicing really when we do that. We're not holding space with each other and being present and listening. So I just wanted to remind us about our breath, because we tend to forget about it and we kind of just let it automatically do its thing. But it's a really powerful tool when you're trying to just simplify and be present and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. That was really beautiful. And, you know, we're not really getting into the winds and channels on this retreat, but it is such a huge aspect of the path, the breath, that our thoughts ride on the wind that's moving through our body. So to understand the breath and how the wind moves and carries our thoughts, and how to cut the breath in ways or manipulate or maneuver it through the channels of our body is a very big part of Vajrayana and Tantra. Actually, that's what we're, you know, it's like one of the more advanced teachings. I touched on it very, very little here, just mentioned it, but it's volumes of teachings and oral instructions have been dedicated to it, and years of practice from many, many monks. We're on the Kaju Vajrayana path here, so that does eventually come in. Yeah, so it is so important. Yeah, thank you.
So, Ani, can you elaborate on when you said the ground of being is observable?
Yes.
That was,
Right.
I wouldn't call that my experience in those
Yeah.
exact words.
Yeah. You
Because
haven't-
it is observingness itself, at least here, but I would like to,
Yeah, yeah. So, and I think there's different experiences and different interpretations, and I think we can just give space for that as well.
I was wondering what your experience is when you say that.
My experience is that, and it's not all the time, but it's becoming more apparent, that as I'm looking around, I'm actually seeing the connections to the ground of being. There's no real objects that look independent to me very much anymore.
That's what I thought. Maybe you were meaning when I'm saying it's as this or it's
Right.
as that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
there's a luminosity. Dharmakaya is very luminous, and we are kind of veiled, right? So we're seeing phenomena in a certain way. There's a certain darkness, actually, that's going on. But as that's thinning out, as we're not kind of, the mind's not creating so much this environment, and it's becoming clearer, people especially, any animated anything is more luminous, where, particularly people. Like when I see people, I always see glowing eyes. I always see like white skin, like just a luminosity coming out of the pores of our body. And that's pretty normal as we're going through the stages, right? And it becomes more and more apparent. So then, but even beyond animated objects in our world, phenomena itself becomes more, it almost looks like it's moving. In, you know?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Does that kind of, I don't know if that,
Yeah, it was a misinterpretation here. I completely understand what you're saying, and that is the experience here too. I call it crystal diamond world.
yeah.
It took quite a while to get used to, actually.
Yes.
That perception of the crystal diamond prismed perception of humans, everything really.
Yeah.
So, but I get that. I guess I was just trying to, something about it made me think, oh, is she looking directly at the ground of being? But I got it, what you're saying.
Yeah,
now.
and you know, I'm not fully awake, right? I'm a beginner on the path, having experiences, glimpses of emptiness.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, when I say yet, it hasn't happened for me really yet in the way that, you know, I'm anticipating it may at some lifetime in the future, who knows?
Yeah.
But you had said something in the beginning of your share that it was, I can't remember the word, self-reflective, or what did you?
Yeah.
Can
I
you-
mean, it is reflective. Yeah.
Reflective of our own mind, like our own mind is reflecting back to us. This is us? Is that what you mean?
I mean that the ground here, the ground of being is, everything is arising
Yeah.
from and as that, and the seeing of that, the seeingness, and the seeing and the seen are all the ground of being.
Right. Yeah, it's all
Right, but
right.
I don't know, there was just something, I just wanted to hear your thoughts about it,
Yeah.
so thank you.
I love to talk about this with you, with everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things I'm constantly contemplating myself.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's just for me one of the most fascinating aspects of the path is this transition into emptiness. I mean, in the stages we're going to get into more tomorrow, it talks about how, you know, we're breaking it up into 5 stages, which is the third Karmapa's treatise, really. But the first 2 stages, we're still in what's called mundane human existence. We're still pretty human. In the third stage, the path of seeing, where we really are established in emptiness, we're no longer human in the same way. We're now spiritually advanced beings, and we don't operate in the same way. So, by definition, really, emptiness dharmakaya really comes into play in that third stage, the path of seeing. I don't experience myself in that space, but you know, there's an anticipation of it as we, and glimpses of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like for me, when I first encountered these teachings, the stages of the path as spoken about by Jamgon Control, it fascinated me because it showed that the path could be spoken about with such clarity and precision. I think when I first started on my path, a lot of things seemed very convoluted, and that's what I kind of thought the path it would be. Like the spiritual journey, there's no really understanding it, but you kind of just do this thing that,
Yeah.
you know, and have experiences. But now it's like there is so much. I think I really love these teachings because there's so much detail, and I think what do you say? I feel like when I read these teachings or when I experience them, they show me that there is a way that our minds are, like when we talk about the nature of the mind. And if you walk through certain steps, it will transform in these ways. Like I think we're going to get into the 12 links of dependent arising tomorrow. and that's a description of the way in which we fall into suffering. And it's the same, if you're a conscious being, you experience this. And I think that's just really so interesting. It's like, as a conscious being, we have a skeleton. There's a structure to the way that we experience. And I think that's very encouraging also, that the spiritual journey does in fact lead you somewhere, and that it's not convoluted and unclear, but actually understood by many. And
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page with so much of what you said. And that was absolutely my personal experience of, oh, okay, this is happening. I have no idea why or what, but I'll just flow with it and see what happens. I know it'll turn out okay, probably. And Tibetan Buddhism is, no, here's everybody. The thing that was shocking for me at a certain point on the path was to find out that all our minds work exactly the same. The mechanism of the mind, it's not unique. It's like, this is how it works for every single one of us. And to me, that felt like, okay, well, that's just some kind of computer program that I could, stop if I want to, which is kind of what the teachings are telling us. We're in control of this like machine, this mechanism. It's not driving us, we should be driving it, which I think is a big point, to turn things around for us. Yeah, tomorrow we are going to get into, it is a handout, the 12 links of dependent arising. And I gave, attached to it is just, it can be interpreted in many, many ways. And I think it's most interesting when we start looking into it, inquiring it, and seeing how we ourselves interpret it, which may not be exactly what the definitions say. But I would say honor how we're interpreting it, because we can see it in motion once we understand how it works. And it's kind of trippy to do that. It's like, whoa. Yeah, so, yeah, I think that's a really, I'll read that one, see where it is. That one part that one quote, which was from the rice seedling, which was when Buddha Shakyamuni gave the links of dependent arising sutra. And I abbreviated it because it's quite long. Whoever perfectly understands dependent arising is prophesied for unexcelled, perfect, and complete awakening. The knower of the world, the incomparable charioteer of those who need taming, the teacher of gods and humans, such a person will become a perfect and complete Buddha. Oh, extremely powerful sutra. And of course, we're not going to get into all the levels of it. We'll do as much as we can in a session tomorrow. Yeah. Anybody from Zoom? I can't tell. We'll check and see.
Melissa says, I just wanted to let Ani know the meditation was so powerful, even over Zoom. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
And then Stacy says, agreed, Melissa. I'm also so very grateful for the Zoom. Yeah. And Liz also sends her. Yeah. So nice to hear from you, Casey.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone on Zoom, for being with us, too. I love this tech. I had a lot of resistance to Zoom because I always felt like people should be here in person. But it is really beautiful technology for us, and I'm really appreciative of it, that we have it, because sometimes people can just not physically be here, and we can still have them connected to us, which is so amazing. So thank you, everyone that's attending. And it's almost 5. I think do we want to, are there more questions or any? Okay.
I'd like to say something about the Zoom. I'm on Zoom. As you know, everybody, I'm the old lady who lives here, and I'm deaf and I'm blind. And this is the first time I've been able to come to a retreat and hear everything.
Wow.
Because I am on Zoom on my phone, and that phone goes directly to my hearing aids, which make a little bit of noise. So David Daniels gave me this to cover that up. And I have been able to hear the entire session. And so that it's just very important for people to understand this, because we're all going to begin to get blind and deaf. And it doesn't negate the path.
Thank you, Angela.